There are moments in life when everything we hold on to suddenly slips away. Times when the things we worked for, sacrificed for, or even the people we loved most, disappear. In those moments, the world feels heavier, quieter, and painfully unfamiliar. We stand still, looking back, hoping the past might return, hoping what we lost might find its way to us again. But life rarely moves backward. Still, many of us cling to yesterday, replaying what once was, holding the pieces of a chapter that has already ended. We tell ourselves that if we wait long enough or try hard enough, things might return to the way they used to be. Yet the truth is simple: healing never comes from staying in the ruins. This story reminds us that real courage is not about pretending to be strong. It is taking one small step forward even when your heart is still broken, even when your hands still tremble, even when the past feels louder than the present. Because healing does not arrive all at once. It begins the moment you stop carrying yesterday's failures and choose, even with fear, to move toward tomorrow. David lived in a small town where everyone knew him as a hardworking young man, determined, ambitious, and someone who never stopped dreaming. From a very young age, he believed in one simple yet powerful truth: if you truly put in the effort, nothing is impossible. That belief guided him onto the path of entrepreneurship, building a business from nothing. The early days were filled with struggles, sleepless nights, endless hours of work, and sacrifices no one ever saw. But eventually, everything began to bloom. David's name became the pride of the town. When he walked into a room, people listened. When he spoke, others trusted him. His business grew rapidly, as if nothing could stand in its way. But success, at times, is more fragile than we think. It only takes one storm, a few wrong decisions, a partner's betrayal, an opportunity slipping away in the night. Everything David poured his heart into could collapse in an instant. And that is exactly what happened. The business that was once his greatest pride became a burden. The compliments that once lifted him turned into whispers behind his back. The streets he used to walk with confidence became places where he felt judged. And then he realized a truth: effort is never wasted, but it doesn't make you invincible. After the business collapsed, David felt as if he had fallen into a bottomless void. The same people who once praised him now stepped away, their every glance carrying a silent judgment. He walked through the old town feeling like he was standing before an invisible court, one where people remembered only his final chapter: failure. Even so, David couldn't let go. Every morning, he passed by the old building and looked up at the sign that had been replaced with an unfamiliar name. The door that once opened into his future had become nothing more than a memory. And David stood there, as if waiting just a little longer would somehow turn back time. In his mind, the past replayed more vividly than the present. The sound of machines running, the chatter of employees, the laughter that echoed after each successful deal. Those sounds, though only memories now, were powerful enough to swallow the life he was living. At night, David reopened his old files, contracts, spreadsheets, all the things that no longer mattered. He convinced himself that if he could only find the moment where he went wrong, he could fix everything. But the truth was different. Looking back never saves the future. Still, David trapped himself in a loop of if only, believing he could start again in the very place everything had fallen apart. Even though deep in his heart he knew this: what broke him would never be the thing that brings him back. Failure didn't just knock David down, it swallowed him whole. Everywhere he went, he felt the silent stares, the whispered conversations people thought he couldn't hear. Those who once admired him now spoke of his downfall as if it were a tragic story worth repeating. That's life. People don't remember how hard you tried, they remember where you fell. Day after day, David returned to the building where he had once placed all his dreams. His old office, cold, empty, and abandoned, became the only place he couldn't let go of. He stood in the doorway, looking at the desk that had once been covered with plans and hope. Now, all that remained were fragile pieces of memory. Instead of moving forward, David drowned himself in an endless stream of recollection. He searched through every decision, every moment, trying to trace the beginning of his collapse. At night, he sat for hours among boxes of old documents, running his fingers over the pages as if the answer was hidden somewhere between the lines. But the past never changes, and neither did he. Failure didn't just destroy his career. It took away his direction, his confidence, and even parts of himself. David didn't just mourn what he once had, he was sinking deeper into the things he could no longer let go of. David lived like a man trapped between two worlds. The present was blurry, while the past clung to him with a persistence that refused to let go. Every night, he opened old files and faded plans, hoping to find the exact moment when everything began to slip out of his hands. He believed that if he could understand the reason, he could fix everything. But the more he read, the more pages he turned, the deeper he sank into questions that had no answers. The words, "if only," became an invisible cage imprisoning him. If only I hadn't trusted the wrong person. If only I had chosen a different path. If only I had been wiser. These thoughts repeated endlessly, like an old song pulling him back into the same pain. He didn't realize that his stubborn insistence on looking backward was locking the door to his future. Day after day, David continued visiting the places that once belonged to him. The old street, the old office, the chair he used to sit in. He touched them as if trying to keep the warmth of his previous life from fading away. But all of it was just an empty shell. What he held on to wasn't memory, it was a wound that had never healed. David was no longer living, he was merely existing inside a past that had already collapsed. One gloomy afternoon, as David sat silently in front of the old building, the office he had once built with all his passion, a young boy nearby watched him with curiosity. The child noticed the way David stared at the faded sign, as if trying to reclaim something long lost. After a few moments, the boy walked over and asked a simple question that pierced straight into David's mind. "If this place makes you sad, why do you keep coming here every day?" David froze. He had never considered that he was trapped, right at the place where he had once shined the brightest. All this time, he believed that returning here would help him understand why everything had collapsed. But the boy's words made him realize the truth. He wasn't looking for answers, he was holding on to the pain. The boy continued, innocent yet incredibly sharp. "When I broke one of my toys, my mom told me not to hold it too long or I'd cut my hand. Isn't it the same for you, mister?" Those simple words hit David harder than anything he had heard in months. A child saw what he, a grown man, hadn't had the courage to face. He was living inside the ruins of his own past. That moment became a wake-up call. He understood that no one could save him unless he chose to step out of his past himself. And to begin, he only needed to do one thing: turn his back on the place that had broken him. That night, heavy rain poured down. The droplets sliding across the window seemed to mirror David's own tangled emotions. He sat alone in the dark room, surrounded by old documents, fragments of memories he had been clinging to. But this time, he wasn't searching for answers. He simply sat still, facing the truth he had avoided for so long. Amid the roar of the storm, David whispered a sentence he never imagined he would say. "I've been stuck for far too long." That moment wasn't a collapse, it was an awakening. He realized he hadn't been defeated by failure itself, but by his attempt to appear strong, to deny the pain, to pretend he was fine. But healing never begins with denial. It begins with acceptance. For the first time in months, David allowed himself to fully feel the emptiness inside, without running, without hiding. He understood that only by admitting his weakness could he begin to rediscover real strength. The rain outside gradually softened. David stood up and opened the window, letting the cold air brush against his face. The sensation cleared his mind in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. He didn't know what the future would hold. But he knew this: he no longer wanted to live in the numbness of his past. It was the first step, small but powerful enough to change his entire life. That day, David went to the small cafe at the end of the street, where Mr. Ellis, the elderly man respected by the entire town, always sat for his afternoon tea. David didn't intend to talk, he just wanted to sit in silence. But with just one glance, Mr. Ellis seemed to understand the heavy weight David was carrying inside. After a moment, he gently set his teacup down and said, "Do you know what makes pain last the longest? It's not the wound, it's holding on to the broken pieces." David looked up, confused. Mr. Ellis continued, "When glass breaks, people often try to piece it back together. But the faster you try, the tighter you cling to it, the deeper the cuts on your hands become. You're not hurting because the glass shattered. You're hurting because you keep trying to hold on to it." Those words left David in stunned silence. Mr. Ellis looked directly into his eyes, his voice deep but warm. "Letting go isn't giving up. It simply means you stop letting what's broken continue to make you bleed." David saw himself in every word, all those months clutching his old company, his old mistakes, his old pride, as if letting them go meant losing a part of who he was. But the truth was, he had only been hurting himself even more. Mr. Ellis placed a hand on his shoulder. "You cannot heal by holding on to what's already broken. You heal only when you are brave enough to set it down." In that moment, David felt something inside him grow lighter, as if, for the first time, he could clearly see the path he needed to take. After his conversation with Mr. Ellis, David began to realize that change doesn't come from grand leaps, but from small, deliberate steps. The next morning, instead of walking the familiar route that passed by his old office, the place he unconsciously returned to every day, he chose to turn down a different street. It was a small change, but to David, it was his way of telling himself, "I don't belong there anymore." He went back home and opened the dusty desk he had ignored for months. For the first time in a long while, he didn't sit down to search for mistakes or dissect the past. He cleaned everything. He threw away papers that no longer mattered and neatly organized the few things worth keeping. Each sheet of paper dropping into the trash felt like a piece of heavy memory lifted off his shoulders. David also began writing a journal. At first, just simple lines, his feelings, his worries, and the small hopes he still had left. Writing didn't change the past, but it helped him see himself clearly instead of hiding from his own thoughts. None of these actions transformed his life overnight, but they made him feel alive again, not living in regret but living in the present. He slowly regained clarity, a sense of control, and most importantly, a peace he hadn't felt in a very long time. Small steps, but real ones. And from those steps, his life finally began to move again. After clearing out the clutter in his life, David understood that if he wanted to change, he had to step outside and start again, even if it meant beginning with the smallest things. So he began helping people around him. When he saw a shop struggling to organize its inventory, he offered a hand. When a young cafe owner was overwhelmed with management issues, he shared some of the methods he had once used himself. At first, this humility made David uncomfortable. From someone who once ran a large company, he now found himself doing tasks he had never imagined doing before. His pride fought back fiercely. Many times he wondered, "Is this the lowest point of my life?" But then he realized an important truth. Real growth doesn't come from success. It comes from being willing to do small things when necessary. Each time he helped someone, he felt a part of himself slowly being restored. The lessons he shared weren't to show how knowledgeable he was. They were reminders to himself that his experience still held value. David also spent time talking with young people who were just starting their own ventures. He listened to their stories, offered practical advice, and sometimes simply encouraged them not to give up. In these small actions, he began to rediscover the meaning of life. No spotlight, no applause, just humble, honest steps forward. And from those quiet steps, his rebirth quietly began. As his mind grew lighter and those small steps slowly brought back his balance, David realized he could finally see the world with new eyes. He no longer walked through town like a failure hiding from his past. Instead, he observed, listened, and started noticing gaps he had never paid attention to before. David saw many small shops struggling with management, services operating without coordination, and countless needs that no one seemed willing to address. Strangely, he had never noticed any of these things back when he was chasing grand success. But now, with a humbler mindset, every small yet meaningful opportunity appeared clearly before him. He began taking notes, analyzing, and gradually shaping a new business idea. Simple, practical, and nothing like the overly ambitious plans he once pursued. This time, he didn't want to build a business driven by ego, but by a genuine understanding of people's needs and the value he could bring to them. When he started, everything moved slowly. There were no impressive numbers, no loud praise, no spotlight. But it was precisely that slowness that allowed his new model to grow sturdier each day. It was like a young tree sinking its roots deep into the soil, invisible to most, yet quietly gaining strength. David could feel it clearly. This time he was rebuilding his life with wisdom, not illusions. And that realization helped him walk forward with greater confidence every single day. As time passed, David's new work gradually stabilized and grew in a way he had never experienced before. There were no more rushed leaps or explosive ambitions like in his younger days. This time, everything came slowly, but steadily. Customers sought him out not because of his old reputation, but because of his sincerity, his knowledge, and his ability to understand them through the lessons he had once painfully learned. Little by little, a small community formed around him. People who trusted him, learned from him, and walked alongside him. What he built was no longer an achievement created to prove something to the world, but the natural result of genuine maturity. Those humble days of serving, rebuilding, and correcting himself had become the solid foundation for his renewal. Along that path, David discovered that the fire within him was still burning, but refined. It was no longer the impulsive flame that wanted to conquer the world, but a steady one that sought to contribute, to create value, and to bring something good to the people around him. Eventually, David opened a small office, not luxurious, not noisy, but meaningful. As the sunset cast its warm light on the clear glass windows, he felt a peace he had never known before. His old wounds had faded into gentle reminders, no longer heavy burdens. He smiled, realizing that he was no longer living for applause, but to stay true to his nature and his purpose. David's journey of rebirth had truly begun. The final lesson reminds us that we should never stay in the place where we once fell, because the past cannot heal us. True change begins with small steps, and humility is the foundation of rebirth. Failure is simply a teacher that makes us stronger, and our scars are proof that we survived. Our real value lies in who we are, not in what we have lost. Lasting success comes from creating value for others. And in the end, every ending quietly opens the door to a new beginning. Thank you so much for listening and following this story. Please support us by liking and sharing the video. It truly motivates us to keep creating more meaningful and positive stories for you. Don't forget to like and share, everyone. And please subscribe to our channel to support us in the days ahead. Thank you so much.